few days ago, Venerable Chodron was talking about motivation, and then I read this short, actually one page by His Holiness, and I thought to talk about this today. And I think I'll just retitle it, this one page, Teaching Advice on Living Our Lives, because it seemed like it, although it was applying mostly to spiritual practice, it seemed like the advice was good generally. So first I'll read these 5 paragraphs, and then I'll just talk about each paragraph individually. So this is in a book called Illuminating the Path to Enlightenment, where he gives a commentary on Atisha's Lamp to the Path to Awakening. And it's in the intro. And it says, time is always moving minute by minute and second by second. As time moves on, so do our lives. Nobody can stop this movement. However, one thing is in our hands, and that is whether or not we waste the time we have, whether we use it in a negative or constructive way. The passage of time through which we live our lives is the same for all of us, and there's a basic equality between those of us who are part of this time. The difference lies in our state of mind and motivation. Proper motivation does not come about simply by our being aware that one kind of motivation is right and another wrong. Awareness does not change motivation, it takes effort. If we make this effort wisely, we will attain a positive, desirable result. But unwise effort is akin to self-torture. Therefore, we need to know how to act. Actually, I think whoever wrote this did a great job, because I've noticed when I went through it, every paragraph has a great opening sentence, and then the last sentence leads right directly into the next paragraph. So, very good skill. This issue of making a wise use of effort is very important. For example, even external development, such as construction of a building, requires tremendous amount of diligence and care. You need to take into account its exact location, the suitability of the environment, the climate, and so forth. Having taken all those factors into account, you can then build a reliable and appropriate structure. We know a little bit about that here. Similarly, when you make effort in the realm of mental experience, it's important to first have a basic understanding of the nature of the mind, thoughts, and emotions, and also to take into account the complexity of human physiology, the human physiological condition, and how it interfaces with the surrounding environment. In the last paragraph, therefore it's important for you to have a wide, comprehensive knowledge of things so that you don't exert all your effort blindly, pursuing your goal on the basis of a single point. That's not the way of the intelligent, the way of the wise. The way of the wise is to exert effort on the basis of a much wider knowledge. So some things in here when I first read this really stood out to me, but I'm going to go through it in order so this makes some level of sense. So to me, the first one where he's talking about time is like a wake-up call to use our time well. My dad used to say, we used to get to charge stuff at this one store, and you always had to pay the bill. And he used to say, if you take care of the nickels and dimes, the dollars will take care of themselves. So that's the thing I grew up with, and it's the same kind of thing with our time. How we take care of small amounts of time, is basically how we end up living our lives. So, but then what is the difference? The lead-in, the last sentence that leads into the next thing is the difference lies in the state of our mind and our motivation. So now he leads into this, and what really stood out to me was when he was saying, maybe I should read the whole sentence because it will make more sense. When he said, proper motivation does not come about simply by being aware that one kind of motivation is right or wrong. Being aware, when people get interested in Buddhism, awareness is a big topic. And you can sometimes think that just having awareness is good enough. But he's making it very clear here that being aware is not enough. And I think one reason this struck me is because sometimes I'm not so aware of my motivations, but even when I figure out what they are, they're good motivations, but I'm still having problems, So it's like, and so like, wow, then even when I'm aware, sometimes it's not good enough. So I just was like, wow, there's so much more to being skillful in our lives. And even, so there are times where we're aware of our motivations, but still things don't come out so well. This paragraph, I think, is more leading towards more someone who doesn't even know if their motivations are good or bad, or how to go about that. So it leads into this thing of we have to know how to act. Well, motivation is one part of our actions, but it's not everything. And as Lama Tsongkhapa said, it's always struck with me, effort without wisdom leads to exhaustion. So that always is something that I try to, think about, like, because sometimes you're making a lot of effort and you just are like exhausted, or it all feels futile or whatever. And we have the same kind of saying about compassion. Compassion without wisdom doesn't always turn out so well. So things aren't, that simple. Okay, and then the next two paragraphs, the one about building a building, I think everybody gets that. But the real thing it's telling us is that we have to make effort in the realm of our mental experiences. And so this is where in our Buddhist practice, but even in other avenues of life, we learn how to become a doctor to our own mind, is one way to say it. And so we have to learn, and he lists these things, like we need to have a basic understanding of the nature of the mind, our thoughts, our emotions. And a lot of that we might start off with intellectually, but then we have to find it in our experience and learn how to work with these things, explore our experience. And so, for example, some of the things that come under this department that we need to learn about are like, they actually shape our views. Like, if you think you're kind of inherently bad, then what would be the point of trying to change? Like if you think that your anger or your afflictions are just part and parcel with your mind and that's who you are. I remember somebody used to say, this is just who I am. Well, if you think that's the way the mind works, this is who I am, I'm stuck with this, then you already got yourself kind of like in a corner before you even start trying to work on your mental experiences. Or maybe you have to look at your life and, well, am I always angry, like every moment? Am I really an angry person inherently all the time? And so also one thing we learn in Buddhism is about how things work in terms of mind and emotion and whatever, is you can't have like two contradictory states of mind at the same time. Like you can't have love in your mind at the same time that you have hatred in your mind. So, you have to check that out and see if that's true. And then once you learn these things, then you have to figure out how to make use of this information that we learn about our emotions and our thoughts and even how the mind works. So there's a lot to that little sentence there. But then he goes on and says, and then take into account the complexity of the human physiological condition. And that was like, yeah, then we go too far sometimes and think like, I can control everything with my mind. Well, it's a mind-body kind of connection that we have going on. And so there's a relationship between the two, and we have to learn about that. So for instance, and also there's a mind-breath connection.